There were plenty of people who opposed the US entry into the First World War, and they had different reasons. The early 20th century is, in some ways, the peak time for the global peace movement. Many of these pacifists are being motivated by religious sensibilities. Some are motivated by secular reasons. Some are motivated by feminism and a belief that war was a masculine undertaking that women could stand up against and stop. Some of them are motivated by economic arguments, that war is not in the interests of working people or of countries in general.
Entering World War I by 1917 was far from a universally popular idea. In the Midwest, where you had substantial numbers of German-speaking Americans, they weren't necessarily interested in getting into the war. And in the far West, where you had a large number of Irish Americans who actually still hated the British for the famine in the middle of the 19th century, none of these people are interested in going to war.
And then there were others who opposed U.S. entry into the war that drew on American labor movement, which argued that war was not in the interests of ordinary working people.
Southerners in general and Midwesterners as well really thought that this was a war that was sponsored by Northeastern industrialists to make more profit.
It's very clear that to keep national unity and to keep industrial production going, that the government will need to suppress those voices.
If you were a member of the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, you actually ran the risk of being beaten, lynched, as well as undergoing mob violence. Employers had no reluctance bringing in strikebreakers, state police, National Guardsmen to put down any sort of incipient riot, and I mean put it down violently. Any refusal to follow the lines of the war and be supportive can get you in difficulty.
At the same time that the United States adopts the draft, the same law establishes the right of conscientious objection, in which someone who is drafted tells the government that he cannot serve for religious or other reasons. Over the course of the war, 65,000 men claimed status as conscientious objectors and either refused to serve in the military at all or sought out other forms of service that were in non-combat or civilian roles.
It's pretty hard to convince the authorities in the United States that anyone should object to the war in this frenzy of patriotism that gradually overcomes the country.
Conscientious objectors experienced intimidation, bullying, physical violence, and in some cases, prosecution for refusing to obey military orders.
The last thing you want to do if you're the average citizen is be associated with them in any way, shape, form, or fashion. These people are regarded primarily as a danger to the war effort.
The primary obligation that Americans were told to perform for the government was military service. So citizenship and military service become linked. And this means people who opposed the war found themselves increasingly under scrutiny from their neighbors and in fact from government officials as well. This played out in big ways and small. There were laws on the books which made it a crime to criticize the war or to criticize the government war effort. There was the American Protective League that existed to investigate cases of disloyalty. So ordinary people who had stood up against the war or just criticized how it was being fought could find themselves under legal charges.
For those who objected to the war, they will ultimately be freed from prison in the end, and many of them are able to resume their lives. But the difficulty is you've got a prison record. You are labeled as being unpatriotic, so the consequences could carry on long after the war.
The divisions of the war are sort of papered over, but they don't go away. Soldiers are returning, the economy is in trouble. There's just been a revolution in Russia that brings a socialist government to power. This generates political fear and controversy that culminates in the first Red Scare. As ideas about socialism are spreading throughout Europe, many Americans fear that that's coming to the United States. This generates investigations, raids, deportations of people who opposed the government or took radical positions. So the war ended in November 1918, but peace wouldn't arrive in the United States for some time to come.